And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here, and today we're going to be taking a look at a re-release of a game. We're going to take a look at Outpost, the 20th Anniversary Edition by Stronghold Games. And this is going to be a resource type of game where you're going to be building up factories. You're going to be trying to use those factories or different types of technologies to get more money in order to buy either upgrades or more factories and kind of continue this process until you reach the end of the game. As you go on through the game, more and more types of technologies will become available, some of them leading into other technologies, some of them just giving you more points. So the game plays 2 to 9 players. It takes about 25 minutes per player, so you may want to keep it to a smaller player number. And is for ages 12 up. So with that said, let's take a look at what you get inside this box, how the game plays, and then I'll give you my final thoughts on it. So here you can see most of what comes with Outpost, and this is not set up for a game in particular. There are all of these different era cards. There are different eras. This is Era 1. All of the Era 1s are blue, Era 2s are red, and Era 3s are purple. And you'll be progressing through these 3 eras in the game, but there are different levels of technologies, and these will come out semi-randomly. You'll be rolling a die, and these are going to be what you use to upgrade your civilization as you go along. All of these other cards here are going to be different types of resources kind of that you produce, but each of these resources really has a monetary value. And the lowest resource is going to be ore, and then you're going to have water, and then some of these other ones, new chemicals, are a little bit better, and then some of the other ones here you can see with the special little chits above them are really quite good and give you more money. But when you look at these, they're going to have a value on them. For example, this one here has a value of 6. Water is unimportant. It is worth 6 credits, and you're going to be spending these in order to buy factories, in order to buy different types of upgrades here, which you'll be bidding on, and in order to buy workers, which will run your factories. So at the beginning of the game, you're going to have some money, and you're going to have a certain amount of factories. I believe you start with several of these ore factories, which in the game you'll see they have 2 sides. This one costs 10 money to buy, and then on the front it's worth 1 victory point and has a worker on it. It requires 1 worker of either human or android to run it, or robot to run it, but unimportant. You're going to have a certain amount of factories, and that's going to give you a certain amount of cards each turn. So at the start of the game you're going to have a certain amount of factories. You're going to have 2 of these ore factories out in front of you, both operated by a worker, and you're going to have 1 water factory. And the value of these factories is going to be on the back. It's worth $20. On the front, you can see what it produces. It's worth 1 victory point, and it requires 1 either person or a robot to operate it, and it will produce 1 water card each round, as long as it's operated. At the beginning of the game, you actually get double your number of productions. So since you have 2 ore factories, you're going to get 4 cards. And since you have 1 water factory, you're going to get 2 water cards. And you'll see the points or the credits value on these fluctuates. For example, this one's worth 8, whereas this one's worth 6. And then you have these different ore ones. We have 1, 4, 2, and another 1. And so you'll see they vary, so there's a little bit of luck of the draw on how much money you'll get. After you get your starting setup, you're going to roll this die, and this die in the first stage is going to be a D4. It's going to determine how many of these cards you get at the beginning of the game, and then each round how many or which of these cards comes out. So you'd roll the die, and you're going to roll the die equal to the number of players. So right now I rolled a 2, and the 2 age card would come out, and this is a warehouse. It's going to cost a minimum of $25 in bid, and it's going to increase your hand limit. So at the beginning of the game you have a hand limit. This would make it larger, meaning you could have more money, and gives you 1 victory point. And you'd roll this die, and you need a number of cards equal to the number of players. So let's just say, for example, we're doing a 2-player game. I rolled another number 2. Well, that's not possible, because you can never have more of the same level of card than half the number of players rounded down. And in a 2-player game, that would be 1. So we couldn't have another 2. We'd roll the die again. I got a 3, so I'd bring out a level 3 card. And this one's going to be $30. It is a heavy equipment card. And it's required for the purchase of titanium factories, and titanium will be even better. You can see the titanium's worth 11. In addition, it's going to give you some discounts on some other things that you can buy later in the game, and it's worth 1 victory point. So now that we have our 2 cards out, we go to the different player turns. First, you're going to get more production cards. We've already done that for our round, so we're not going to do that again. But then you're going to go into the individual player turns, and they're going to start with their player actions. And player actions are several things. The first is that you may bid on one of these cards. and bidding on one of these cards is going to cost you the minimum bid of what's listed on the card. So this one would cost 30. In the first rounds, you're not really likely to do this because you're not likely to have 30 money in your hand. But if you did, let's say you wanted to bid on this, you would put it up for auction, and you would bid 30, and it would go round table in order, everybody having the chance to bid until everyone passed in order and a clear winner was determined. That player would pay their money and get this card. If they paid extra because they didn't have the exact number of money in their hand, they would have to pay the extra and lose it, and they'd put this card in front of them, adjusting the victory points and having that card for the rest of the game. Now, if, let's say, for example, it was the hand size card they bought, they would have a player sheet in front of them, and they would use this sheet to mark all of their different things. So, for example, it shows up here your victory points. You would adjust those appropriately. There are 2 markers that go on the 0s and 10 spots, or the 1s and 10 spots. You can adjust them in order to keep track. You have a listing for your hand limit. You have a listing for how many different humans you may have in your colony, which is limited to this number wherever your marker is. And then at the bottom you have all the information you need to play the game. So you would mark that appropriately with the appropriate markers that you have, all of them different, to keep track of your different resources and hand limits and stuff. And then you would move on to your actual player actions. And so we've gone through the bidding, but then you would go on and you would have the option of building factories. And you can only build factories at the beginning of the game. You're only allowed to build ore and water, but through different upgrades you can build titanium or research or new chemicals, and all of these are going to give you better and better types of production cards, which will give you more money. For example, new chemicals, this one has a 20 on it. Research has a 16 or higher or lower. And then you can get to some really good ones, which you have to get special technologies for. They'll give you these little markers, which say you have to operate them, for example, this one with a human, no robots in this spot. And this one is going to give you some of these really good cards. We have 40, so a lot of money, and you're going to obviously get more and more money as the game progresses. Now, when one player reaches a certain number of victory points by getting enough different types of factories or purchasing different upgrades, you're going to go into the next age, and you're going to get a bigger die. And so you're going to roll a D, I guess we have a D10 here instead of a D4. You'd roll it, and that's what technology would come out. Now, you'll see I still rolled a 1, so we're still getting lower technology, but I could roll, for example, a 6, and that would get me a 6 technology, which is going to be significantly more expensive, 50, but it's going to be the one that gets me that pink factory that I showed you earlier. And when you get that, you're going to get, in addition, 3 victory points, and it's going to let you get these microbiotics cards, which are 15 money, or somewhere around that spot. Now, in order to operate all of your factories, you're going to need workers, and after you've bought your factories, you can buy workers with your leftover money in order to operate them. And as I said, you have a colony limitation, which limits how many of these guys you can have, and thus limits how many factories you can operate. The way to get around this is to build the robotics upgrade, which is somewhere in all of these piles. And when you get that, it's going to let you build robots, which are simply the other side of these tokens. And robots are not subject to your colony limitation, except for the fact that you may only have as many robots as you have colonists. So as you progress, you're going to be trying to get better and better factories in order to earn victory points, in order to get more money, in order to earn more victory points. And whoever accomplishes the goal of reaching a certain amount of victory points first is going to be the winner. Now, in addition to having the base game of Outpost, this new edition comes with the Kicker expansion, which is designed by Tom Lehman, who is the designer of Race for the Galaxy. And this is just kind of a little add-on that you can use. There are going to be different what are called Kicker cards for all of the different eras. And you'll choose some of these at the beginning of the game, and they'll be available for bidding on during those player turns, just like the different types of upgrade cards that you can bid on. And they're going to provide you with different types of bonuses. 1, victory points, and then 2, they have things written on them which kind of change how the game plays a little bit. For example, this says when drawing 1 or more water cards, you draw 1 extra card and then choose which one of them to discard. So you have a better chance of getting a better card. One thing I failed to mention previously is that you have these mega cards, which are better than the average of 4 of the same type of cards. So 4 water cards should be not quite as good as 1 of these mega cards. And anytime you earn 4 cards on one turn, you have the choice of taking a mega card. It still counts as 4 cards towards your hand limit, but you'll see here this is worth $30, whereas 4 of these water cards might be worth less than that. Anyhow, you have these Kicker cards, and you'll use them in the game. You get certain benefits for them. They get more and more expensive as the eras go on. And when you get to the higher areas, you can see this one's even worth, or costs a minimum of $250, is worth 25 points towards winning the game, but gives you plus 5 colony support limit. So this is a nice little touch in addition to a game which is already pretty complex in terms of the amount of cards, but adds a little bit of a nice touch if you've played the game enough to need something to expand it. And that is Outpost. And so now that we've seen the basics of the game, let's go into my pros and cons on how it plays. First, starting with the cons. My first con is in the range of number of players, 2 to 9. With 2 players, it's only mildly interesting, as you're only competing with that one other person for getting different upgrades and getting more money. And whoever gets the most money is just kind of going to run away with things. With 9 players, I didn't even attempt to play the game. It would be far too long to play, and it would just kind of be unnecessarily tedious. So with a middle number of players, I think you're in an okay range. And the game lends itself to good play in the probably 4 or 3 to 6 range. And with that number of players, if you can get them all to coordinate their calculations at the same time and get everything done, I think you'll have an enjoyable experience. It's a nice civilization type of building game, or technology advancement type of game, and one I would suggest taking a look at if you are not necessarily an AP-prone player. So I enjoyed Outpost with a medium number of players. I think that if you liked the gameplay and what you saw, you should definitely check it out. Stronghold Games, Outpost.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.